You have to check this out. This massive Venator-class Star Destroyer was designed by the people at Galactic Armory, and I printed this on the Elegoo Neptune 4 Max. This particular piece is a 3-piece print, but this could have been done as a 2-piece print as well. I also made this Helldiver 2 helmet as a single piece on the Elegoo Neptune 4 Max, but it took me months of setup and troubleshooting, working with Elegoo's support team, plus a couple of firmware updates from Elegoo to get consistent printing. I'm going to show you how to dial in the Neptune 4 Max, and I'm going to share what I learned about setting up and configuring these printers in order to help you get the best prints out of it. Okay, let's give this a try. A few months ago, I did a troubleshooting video about the Elegoo Neptune 4 Max with some of the things I had learned right after I got the first printer. Consider this a follow-up to that video with some more things that I've learned, but also the steps I've come up with to make sure that you can print great from the Elegoo Neptune 4 Max right out of the box. Okay, so the Elegoo Neptune 4 Max launched with a huge range of problems. It feels like Elegoo might have really rushed the Neptune 4 Max to market, kind of competing with things from Bambu and Anycubic and Creality and some others that were trying to get next-generation Clipper printers to market. A lot of early users said that they felt like beta testers, and I felt like that myself. My original Neptune 4 Max, which I got just before the launch, I've had to replace the controller, the printhead twice, the print surface, and the logic board. Elegoo sent all these parts for free, and installing them wasn't really hard, but fixing a new printer was annoying, and if this was my only printer, I wouldn't have been able to get anything done for months. So a lot of the problems result from a mix of hardware and software issues. The biggest problem with the Max is called the blob of death, and I will show you a blob of death as soon as I figure out where I put the blob of death. So this is caused by runaway filament. When this happens, the filament not only surrounds the nozzle, but it also covers these little teeny wires inside of here, and it becomes impossible to take the filament off without breaking these wires, and suddenly your printer is dead. The blob of death seems to be caused by a mix of problems with the early firmware and problems with how the nozzles were installed at the factory. So let's start with the firmware first. What's important is that you update the firmware before you start using your printer. With the original firmware, which is what is still being installed in shipping printers, at least as of a few weeks ago, when I got the second unit, the firmware has a major problem. With this firmware, after you set the Z-axis offset and then you level the bed, the printer will lose the settings after you restart or sometimes after each print. So you do all your Z-axis and your leveling, and you think that you had your printer leveled properly and set right, but really the printhead would be too high off of the bed because the Z-axis height was lost. The printer would spew filament, and that would cause the blob of death. I did a previous video on troubleshooting the Elegoo Neptune 4 Max, which you can find up here and in the description below, and in that video I had a longer guide on installing the firmware. So jump to that video if you find that these instructions aren't clear. A short version of installing the firmware is that you need a thumb drive, which they call a U drive for some reason, and you need a micro SD card, which they call a TF card. Both of these things come with the new Neptune 4 Max. They're in a package. Don't throw them away. So you put the printer software on the thumb drive and you turn the printer off. And then in the settings menu, you find the arrow, you press the up arrow, and you update the firmware. Only after that firmware is installed, turn the printer back off and put the controller software on the micro SD card. You're going to unscrew the 4 screws on the back of this controller and put the micro SD card in the teeny little slot that's in there. Turn the printer on and it should automatically install the update. Once it tells you it's installed, turn the printer off again, remove the card, screw the controller closed back again. After a lot of testing, the other big cause of the blob of death seems to be bad installation of the nozzle at the factory. It looks like some of the nozzles arrive not fully tightened. This makes the filament ooze out of the threads where it ruins everything. Some other people said that their nozzles were too tight, forcing filament out above the nozzle, but I haven't seen this personally. So now with all new printers, what I do before I install the printhead is I remove and I reinstall the nozzles. Ideally, you'll want a metric ratchet and a pair of pliers, but 2 pairs of pliers will do too. You want to use one set of pliers to hold the heating block in place so you don't bend it when you're unscrewing and tightening the nozzle, and you want the other pliers or the ratchet to be able to unscrew the nozzle. The nozzle should be snug, but don't put a ton of force into it since you could deform the metal of the nozzle. Okay, now let's look at the rest of the unboxing and the things that you need to check during setup. When you first assemble the Max, you must check all of the belts as they can tighten or loosen during shipping. So you want a bit of flex in the belts when you push on them, and the belt shouldn't feel spongy, but you also don't want them so hard that it resists your finger pushing on them either. You want to get somewhere not too hard, not too soft, it's just right. Next, make sure that the bed doesn't wobble on the x-axis. One of my printers had a very, very loose bed, and tightening the eccentric nuts on the rollers did not do anything. If the bed wobbles, you want to check the distance between the 2 sides of the rails. The whole way up and down, there should be exactly 140 millimeters between them. If they're not parallel and they're not 140 millimeters, you can adjust this by removing the bed and part of the case. Instructions for that are on Elegoo's support site. If it all measures 140 millimeters and you still have a wobble, you're going to want to contact Elegoo support because you're going to need a new bed. That's what I needed when I had the problem. One suggestion I have is an upgrade to perform before you start leveling the bed. I like to replace the springs on the leveling wheels with silicone bumpers. The springs get compressed over time and they change shape, the bumpers don't. I have a link to silicone bumpers and other 3D printing gear in the description below. Usually these come in a 4-pack. This particular one has got 4 blue, 4 red, 4 brown, and 4 black. The problem is that the Elegoo Neptune 4 Max has 6 leveling wheels, so you're going to need to buy 2 packages of these, but they're incredibly cheap. I usually use the smallest or the second smallest bumpers in a pack. You just want to make sure that when you put the bumpers in, it doesn't push the sides of the bed when they're screwed down so high off that you're making basically a U with your bed. With a printer as large as the Elegoo Neptune 4 Max, even a little bit of variation from side to side can make a non-flat leveling plate. The first thing you need to do in the leveling screen is set the Z-axis offset. You probably know how to do this already, but with so many new printers, a lot of people have never set the Z-axis, especially when some printers now come without the need to set the Z-axis. You can level the bed manually or automatically. Many people who have used printers for years like to level the bed manually, but I find that manual leveling doesn't work very well on this printer because there are so many spots to adjust. Instead, I use auto leveling, sort of like manual leveling. So what do I mean by that? Well, auto leveling will measure the bed and it will make a profile out of the variation across the bed surface. Basically, it's like a topographical map of your print bed. You might be tempted to level this once, save the profile, and then print. After all, that's what doing an auto leveling is, right? Don't do this. I use the auto leveling like a manual leveling, which happens to take a really long time. On a new Max, I might spend an hour or two doing this, and it seems excessive, but it is the key to getting great prints. Most of the time spent on this, you can just walk away anyhow, as a complete auto leveling pass takes like 10 minutes to do. I can't emphasize enough how an hour or two here saves a print failure that happens a few days into a large print, so don't skip this step. The Max has 2 auto leveling modes, a standard and a professional. Standard samples fewer points and is pretty useless. Professional is what used to be the default. Now you have to go over to the settings menu, you have to go to this menu here, and you have to change the settings to professional. Once you do this, the Neptune 4 Max will be able to do more than 100 sampling points. You run the level and you look at the grid of measurements. You have 3 leveling wheels to turn on the Max on each side. The center numbers in the grid are affected by the 6 leveling knobs on the edges. In other words, there's no way to directly adjust the middle of the plate. The numbers on the left and the right are what matter. Some of the numbers will be negative and some will be positive. This tells you if the sampled point is above or below the leveled center. Ideally, you want to get all the numbers as close to 0 as possible. You're never going to get to 0 with the numbers, but I try to keep all the values below 0.1, and I definitely want to keep all the values below 1. So let's say you have minus 0.08 or plus 0.03. Those are good. Minus 1.2 or plus 2.3. Those are not good. You also want to remember that if one of the points is plus 0.05 and one is minus 0.05, they're actually 0.1 off from each other, not 0.05 off from each other. Anyhow, the printer will heat up and will start the process of sampling a point at a time, and it will do this really slowly. When it's done, check the grid, especially the points on the front, back, and middle of both sides. These are where the wheels are, and this is the only points that you can adjust to level the bed. Also, remember this handy trick. If you want to lower, turn left, and if you need to raise, turn it right. If your numbers are above 0, in other words, turn the dial left to lower it. If they're below 0, turn the wheel right to raise it. That's relative to looking down at the bed from the top of it. Don't think of this as being under the bed and turning them. Okay, so you want to rerun the leveling, and you want to check the numbers again. There's no way you're going to see the numbers that you want the first time you do this, and you probably won't see it for a couple of passes. Do that without saving the profile. There's no point in saving a bad level, and when you save the leveling, the printer reboots and it turns off the heater. You will have to wait for it to heat again. Run the auto level, repeat this as many times as you need to get the values all as close to 0 as possible. When you think that you cannot possibly do this again because they look good enough and you'll kill yourself if you have to run this one more time, you need to save the level. Don't just cancel back out of it. Go again to the small disk icon on the top right corner, click that. Okay, so that's all for leveling, and that is a big part of the job of getting a good print on these printers. One more thing that I notice is that the Max comes with its PEI print surface, which should not need glue for good bed adhesion. But for mine, it's not doing it without glue. Before you print, you want to take the printing plate off of the printer, clean it with a gentle dish soap, and let it dry. Once it's dry, you use a little bit of rubbing alcohol and a cloth to wipe it down. Don't use hand sanitizer. That's got a lot of other chemicals in it. Grab some 70 or 90% IPA and use that. Oh, yeah, one more thing. Don't use the grid setting on these printers because the print head will pass over the same spot in the grid setting multiple times, and that can end up making the nozzle hit some of the cooling plastic and the print falls over. And really, that's what you need to do to get the printer ready. Firmware, proper leveling, and you're just about good to go. If you have other tips, leave them in the comments below, and I will make videos about them too. If you have a Neptune 4 Max and you're having problems, let me know in the comments, and I will pass that on to Elegoo and answer any questions that I can. In this description, you'll find the links for printers and supplies, and buying from those links helps out the channel. I also link to my Etsy channel where I sell 3D printed props and cosplay items. For Dave Tries This, I'm David Schloss, and as always, thanks so much for giving this a try.